Principles by Ray Dalio is not just a book about success, business, or decision-making. It is really a book about how to think clearly, how to face reality honestly, and how to build a life and career around systems that actually work. Dalio is the founder of Bridgewater Associates, one of the world's most successful hedge funds, but what makes this book interesting is not just his financial success. It is the mindset behind it. Over decades, Dalio learned that most painful mistakes come from the same root problem. People do not see reality clearly, and even when they do, they often do not respond to it well. This book is his attempt to solve that problem. He argues that life, work, and success are not random. They follow patterns. And if you can understand those patterns, then you can create principles, meaning repeatable rules that help you make better decisions over time. Instead of relying on moods, guesswork, ego, or impulse, you can build a framework for handling challenges with more consistency and less confusion. Dalio's core message is simple but powerful. Success comes from knowing what is true, accepting it even when it is uncomfortable, and acting on it with discipline. That sounds obvious, but most people do the opposite. They protect their ego, avoid painful feedback, ignore weaknesses, and keep repeating the same mistakes. Dalio believes that if you want exceptional results, you have to become exceptionally honest, especially with yourself. One reason this book stands out is that it mixes personal story with practical philosophy. Dalio does not present himself as someone who always got things right. In fact, one of the most important stories in the book is about how badly he failed when he became too confident in his own opinions. That failure became one of the foundations of his later success. It taught him humility, better decision-making, and the importance of creating principles instead of relying on instinct alone. So as this summary begins, it helps to understand what the book is really offering. It is not a collection of motivational quotes. It is not a soft message about positive thinking. It is a serious argument that reality rewards truthfulness, thoughtful systems, and continuous learning. If you can learn how to deal with reality as it is, rather than as you wish it were, you can dramatically improve the quality of your decisions and the quality of your life. One of the strongest themes and principles is the idea that reality is the ultimate teacher. According to Dalio, reality works like a machine. Causes lead to effects. Patterns repeat. Consequences follow behavior. And whether you like it or not, reality does not bend to your preferences. This means that the first step to improving your life is learning to see what is actually true. This sounds simple, but it is emotionally difficult. Most people do not like truth when it threatens their self-image. They want comfort more than clarity. They want reassurance more than correction. They want to feel right more than they want to get it right. Dalio argues that this is one of the biggest obstacles to growth. If you cannot face what is true, you cannot improve your decisions in a reliable way. The book repeatedly makes the point that pain often comes from the gap between reality and what we wish reality would be. We get frustrated because things are not fair, because outcomes are uncertain, because people disappoint us, because our plans fail, or because our weaknesses get exposed. But resisting reality does not help. In fact, it usually makes the situation worse. The better response is to ask, what is this situation teaching me? What is true here, even if I do not like it? Dalio believes that truth is not something to fear. It is something to use. Accurate diagnosis leads to better decisions. Clear feedback leads to better performance. Honest self-assessment leads to better growth. In his view, the pain of seeing reality clearly is much smaller than the long-term cost of avoiding it. This is why the book places such importance on thoughtful reflection. When something goes wrong, Dalio does not want you to immediately blame other people, get emotional, or move on too quickly. He wants you to pause and study the situation. What happened? Why did it happen? What principle can be created from this so the mistake becomes less likely next time? That process turns failure into progress. This way of thinking is demanding, but it is also freeing. Once you stop expecting life to protect your feelings, you can start learning from life more effectively. You stop taking every setback as a personal insult. You start treating problems as information. And that shift changes everything. It makes you more resilient, more thoughtful, and much more capable of handling uncertainty. In Dalio's world, truth is not always pleasant, but it is always useful. And those who learn to work with reality instead of against it gain a huge advantage over those who stay trapped in denial. One of Ray Dalio's most famous formulas is this: pain plus reflection equals progress. This is one of the central ideas of the entire book, and it captures how Dalio thinks growth really works. In his view, pain is not just something to avoid. It is often a signal that something important needs attention. It may reveal a weakness, a blind spot, a bad habit, a mistaken assumption, or a flaw in the way you think. Most people experience pain and react emotionally. They blame others, distract themselves, defend their pride, or try to forget the experience as quickly as possible. Dalio says that this reaction wastes one of life's most valuable teachers. Pain only becomes useful when it is followed by honest reflection. Reflection turns emotional discomfort into understanding. That means when something goes wrong, the key question is not only what happened. The deeper question is, what can this teach me? Why did I make this mistake? What pattern does it reveal? Is this a one-time error, or is it part of a repeated weakness in my judgment, habits, or temperament? By asking these questions, you start extracting principles from experience. Dalio makes it clear that successful people are not those who never fail. They are those who fail, study the failure, and improve the system that produced it. They do not just recover. They evolve. Every mistake becomes data. Every setback becomes a chance to refine how they operate. This idea is useful in every part of life. If a project fails, reflection can reveal poor planning or bad communication. If a relationship breaks down, reflection may reveal habits of avoidance, defensiveness, or lack of honesty. If a career stalls, reflection might uncover fear, passivity, or weak decision-making. The pain is real, but the lesson is often even more valuable. What makes this principle powerful is that it gives pain a purpose. Instead of treating setbacks as evidence that you are incapable, you can treat them as signals pointing toward growth. That creates a more resilient mindset. You stop expecting an easy path. You start expecting to learn. Dalio's message is not that pain is good by itself. It is that pain becomes useful when you face it directly and think deeply about it. Reflection is what transforms pain into insight, and insight is what transforms mistakes into progress. Without reflection, pain is just suffering. With reflection, it becomes one of the fastest paths to improvement. A major part of principles is Dalio's warning that our biggest obstacles are often internal, not external. Two of the most dangerous internal enemies are ego and blind spots. Ego makes us want to appear right. Blind spots prevent us from seeing when we are wrong. Together, they create a powerful barrier to growth. Dalio believes that many bad decisions happen not because people lack intelligence, but because they let their self-image interfere with truth. They defend bad ideas because those ideas are theirs. They reject criticism because it feels personal. They avoid people who challenge them because disagreement is uncomfortable. In doing so, they choose emotional comfort over accurate thinking. The problem is that reality does not care about your ego. If your judgment is flawed, the consequences will still arrive. This is why Dalio places so much value on humility. Not fake humility, but real humility. The ability to admit that your perspective may be incomplete. That attitude makes learning possible. Blind spots are just as dangerous. Every person has areas where they consistently misjudge situations, misunderstand people, or overlook important details. The trouble is that blind spots are hard to detect on your own. That is why Dalio strongly encourages getting input from others, especially people who see the world differently and think independently. In his view, One of the smartest things you can do is build systems that correct for your weaknesses. That might mean inviting honest feedback, working with people whose strengths complement your weaknesses, or using clear decision-making processes instead of relying only on gut feeling. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to become less trapped by your own limitations. This part of the book is uncomfortable because it asks readers to admit something many people avoid. Your mind is not always a trustworthy guide. You may misread situations. You may repeat patterns without realizing it. You may feel certain and still be wrong. But this is also what makes the lesson so valuable. Once you accept that you have blind spots, you become much more open to growth. Dalio's deeper point is that self-awareness is not weakness. It is strength. The ability to say, I may be missing something here, is one of the most powerful habits a person can develop. It protects you from arrogance, opens the door to better thinking, and makes wiser decisions much more likely. In the end, the book teaches that mastering external challenges begins with mastering your internal barriers. If you can reduce ego, expose blind spots, and become more open to truth, your decision-making improves dramatically. One of the most famous and controversial ideas and principles is Dalio's support for radical truth and radical transparency. These are not just communication preferences. They are part of his entire philosophy for making better decisions and building stronger organizations. Radical truth means being honest about what is really happening. Radical transparency means making that honesty visible rather than hiding it behind politeness, hierarchy, or image management. Dalio argues that many organizations become weak because people avoid uncomfortable truth. They sugarcoat problems, protect reputations, hide mistakes, and filter bad news. This creates a false sense of stability, but under the surface, dysfunction grows. Misunderstandings multiply. Weak decisions go unchallenged. Problems stay hidden until they become too large to ignore. His solution is to create an environment where honesty is normal, expected, and even encouraged when it is uncomfortable. In such a culture, people are expected to speak openly, challenge each other's thinking, and bring issues into the open quickly. The idea is not to be cruel. The idea is to make truth easier to access. This approach has clear benefits. It reduces politics. It exposes errors faster. It prevents people from pretending problems do not exist. It creates an environment where ideas can be tested more objectively. And because people know that criticism is part of the system, feedback becomes less personal and more useful. At the same time, this principle is hard to apply well. Radical honesty without wisdom can become harshness. Transparency without trust can create fear. So the deeper lesson is not simply to say whatever you think. It is to build a culture or a personal habit where truth matters more than appearances and where people are committed to improvement rather than ego protection. Even outside of business, this principle has powerful applications. In personal life, radical truth may mean admitting that a goal no longer matters to you, that a habit is damaging, or that a relationship problem has been ignored too long. It may mean being more honest about money, health, ambition, or weakness. Transparency, in a broader sense, means reducing the gap between what is real and what is being presented. Dalio's larger point is that truth is often hidden because people fear what will happen if it is exposed. But when truth is consistently hidden, the long-term cost becomes much greater. Honest environments may feel intense, but dishonest environments quietly produce bigger failures. In Dalio's framework, radical truth and radical transparency are tools for getting closer to reality. And the closer you are to reality, the better your chances of making decisions that actually work. One of the most distinctive ideas and principles is something Dalio calls believability-weighted decision-making. The idea is simple. Not every opinion should carry the same weight. In many situations, people assume that fairness means everyone's view should count equally. Dalio disagrees. He believes that when the stakes are high, The opinions that should matter most are the ones coming from people who have demonstrated sound judgment and credible experience in that area. In other words, if you are making a medical decision, the opinion of a skilled doctor should matter more than the opinion of someone with no medical knowledge. If you are making an investment decision, someone with a strong track record of understanding markets should probably have more influence than someone speaking from guesswork. This may seem obvious, but many teams and organizations fail because they do not consistently apply this logic. Dalio created systems to identify who was believable in different domains. He wanted decisions to be informed not by status, politics, or confidence alone, but by demonstrated competence and thoughtful reasoning. That helps reduce the risk of groupthink, hierarchy-based mistakes, and emotionally driven decisions. This principle also depends on open disagreement. People need to challenge one another, examine evidence, and test assumptions. The goal is not blind obedience to experts. The goal is intelligent weighting of perspectives. If someone is highly believable in a given area, their opinion deserves serious attention. But even then, ideas should still be examined carefully. This is a valuable lesson for everyday life too. Many people make major decisions based on the loudest voice in the room, the most confident friend, or their own untested instincts. Dalio's approach suggests a better question. Who has earned the right to be trusted on this issue? Who has both knowledge and a record of sound judgment? This principle can improve decisions about business, health, career, money, and even personal development. It encourages intellectual humility. You do not have to know everything, but you do need to know when someone else knows more than you do and when their perspective should meaningfully shape your choice. Believability-weighted decision-making is really about respecting reality through evidence. It says that opinions are not equal just because they are opinions. Some are backed by insight, experience, and proven understanding. And if you want better results, you should learn to recognize the difference. Ray Dalio often describes life and work as a looping process. You set goals, encounter problems, diagnose those problems, design solutions, and then push those solutions through to results. Then the cycle begins again. This loop is one of the most practical frameworks in the book because it turns growth into a repeatable process rather than a vague ambition. The first step is setting clear goals. Dalio emphasizes that you need to know what you are aiming at. Without clear goals, it becomes difficult to judge progress, make trade-offs, or decide what matters. But simply having goals is not enough. Once you start moving toward them, problems will inevitably appear. This is where many people get stuck. They see problems as signs that something has gone wrong. Dalio sees them differently. He sees them as natural and necessary. Problems are not interruptions to progress. They are part of progress. They reveal what stands between you and your goal. After identifying a problem, the next step is diagnosis. This is one of the most important and most neglected stages. Instead of rushing to fix symptoms, Dalio wants you to understand root causes. Why did this problem happen? Was it poor planning? A skill gap? A personality mismatch? Weak communication? Faulty assumptions? Until the cause is clear, solutions tend to be shallow. Then comes design. Once the root cause is understood, you create a solution or system that addresses it. That might mean changing a process, improving a habit, shifting responsibilities, or learning a new skill. Finally, you push that design through to results with discipline and persistence. What makes this loop powerful is that it normalizes struggle. Setbacks no longer mean failure. They simply become information within the loop. You expected a challenge, you studied it, and now you improve the machine. This creates a much healthier relationship with difficulty. It also makes growth more objective. Instead of saying, I need to be better, you can ask, where exactly in the loop am I weak? Do I set unclear goals? Do I avoid diagnosing problems honestly? Do I design weak solutions? Do I fail to execute? Those questions turn self-improvement from something emotional into something practical. Dalio's loop-based thinking is one of the most useful habits in the book. It teaches that progress is not a straight line. It is a cycle of aiming, failing, learning, adjusting, and continuing. The people who improve fastest are not the ones who avoid problems. They are the ones who get better at working through the loop. A major lesson throughout Principles is that good outcomes rarely come from impulse alone. Dalio strongly prefers systems over emotion. He believes that if you want consistent results, you need to rely on clear processes, not just on how you feel in the moment. This matters because emotions are unstable. Confidence rises and falls. Fear distorts judgment. Excitement makes risks look smaller than they are. Frustration makes people react too quickly. Pride prevents correction. If major decisions are made under the control of shifting emotions, inconsistency becomes unavoidable. Dalio's answer is to build principles and systems that guide action even when emotions are running high. A principle is essentially a rule based on experience and reflection. Once you have seen what works and what fails, you turn that lesson into a usable guideline. Over time, these principles become part of a decision-making system. This system-based thinking is especially useful in high-pressure situations. When uncertainty increases, people often become less rational. They chase short-term relief, abandon long-term plans, or swing wildly between extremes. But a person with strong principles can stay more grounded. They are not immune to emotion, but they are less likely to be ruled by it. This is one reason Dalio compares life to a machine. If the machine keeps producing bad outcomes, you do not solve the problem by wishing harder or feeling stronger. You examine the machine. What inputs created this result? What process failed? What should be adjusted? That kind of thinking reduces drama and increases clarity. In ordinary life, this idea can be incredibly useful. A spending problem may need a budgeting system, not just stronger motivation. A health problem may need a routine and environment change, not just temporary enthusiasm. A communication problem may need agreed rules and habits, not just repeated apologies. Systems create reliability where willpower alone often fails. The deeper message is that discipline becomes easier when it is built into the structure of your life. You do not have to reinvent every decision each day. You rely on principles you already know to be sound. That saves energy, reduces confusion, and leads to better long-term behavior. Dalio's approach may feel mechanical at times, but the logic is powerful. Emotions are part of being human, but systems are what help humans improve. If you want better results, do not only ask what you feel like doing. Ask what process is most likely to lead to the right outcome. Although Principles is often remembered for its hard-edged ideas about truth, systems, and performance, one of its most human messages is that a good life depends on meaningful work and meaningful relationships. Dalio makes it clear that achievement alone is not enough. Success becomes much richer when it is connected to purpose and shared with people you trust. This is important because some readers assume the book is only about being brutally rational or hyper-efficient. But Dalio repeatedly shows that great work is deeply connected to the quality of the people around you. Trust, openness, and shared standards make better collaboration possible. Without them, even talented people can become trapped in politics, confusion, and conflict. Meaningful work matters because people need more than comfort. They need challenge, contribution, and a sense that what they are doing has significance. Work becomes meaningful when it stretches your abilities, connects to a clear purpose, and gives you a chance to improve. In Dalio's view, growth and fulfillment are closely tied. People feel most alive when they are learning, contributing, and solving real problems. Meaningful relationships matter because even the best systems depend on human connection. Honest feedback only works when there is enough trust to receive it. High standards only become sustainable when people feel respected. Collaboration becomes powerful when individuals are aligned around truth and mutual improvement rather than ego and status. This is a helpful reminder for anyone pursuing ambition. It is possible to become so focused on performance that you neglect the human side of success. Dalio's better message is that strong relationships are not distractions from meaningful work. They are part of what makes meaningful work possible. This applies beyond business. In everyday life, meaningful work may involve building something valuable, serving others, or growing in mastery. Meaningful relationships may involve family, friendship, mentorship, or partnership. Both require investment. Both require honesty. And both contribute to a life that feels deeply worth living. By including this theme, Principles becomes more than a book about winning. It becomes a book about building a life that is demanding, truthful, and genuinely fulfilling. A life where effort matters, growth matters, and the people you share the journey with matter too. While much of Principles discusses organizations and decision-making systems, the book is also deeply personal. It encourages every reader to develop their own principles for life. Dalio does not want people to copy his rules blindly. He wants them to think carefully about their experiences, extract lessons, and build guiding principles that match reality and their goals. This is a powerful habit because life becomes easier to navigate when you have clear standards. Without principles, people make the same decisions over and over again under emotional pressure. They keep negotiating with themselves. They depend too much on mood, context, and immediate convenience. Personal principles reduce that confusion. A personal principle might be something like, do not make important decisions while emotional. Or, when a mistake happens, diagnose before reacting. Or, seek disagreement from thoughtful people before finalizing a major choice. Or, if a problem keeps repeating, the system is broken. These kinds of rules create consistency. Dalio's larger message is that wisdom should not stay trapped inside experience. It should be captured and made usable. If life teaches you something valuable, write it down. Turn it into a principle. Revisit it. Refine it. Use it again. Over time, this creates a more thoughtful and deliberate way of living. This approach also makes growth measurable. Instead of vaguely hoping to become wiser, you create a structure for wiser behavior. You build a set of principles around money, work, learning, relationships, conflict, health, and decision-making. Then, when difficult moments arrive, you already have a foundation to stand on. What makes this especially useful is that personal principles can reduce regret. Many regrets come from acting against what we already knew was wise. We ignore warning signs. We repeat familiar mistakes. We act impulsively and only think clearly afterward. Principles help close the gap between what we know and what we actually do. Dalio's advice here is not to create endless rules. It is to create thoughtful rules where they matter most. A few strong principles, deeply understood and consistently applied, can dramatically improve the quality of daily life. In that sense, the title of the book is very literal. Principles are not just ideas to admire. They are tools to live by. And the more clearly you define them, the more stable and effective your life becomes. To understand principles well, it helps to see both the strengths and the limits of Dalio's approach. One of its greatest strengths is clarity. Dalio offers a serious alternative to vague self-help advice. He pushes readers to confront reality, think systematically, learn from failure, and build better decision-making habits. For people who value logic, structure, and performance, this can be transformative. Another strength is that the book treats mistakes as material for growth rather than as evidence of permanent weakness. That creates a strong mindset for resilience. It encourages responsibility without self-pity. Instead of asking why life is unfair, it asks what can be learned and improved. The emphasis on truth is also powerful. In a world where many people hide behind image, emotion, and social performance, Dalio's insistence on honest diagnosis is refreshing. He reminds readers that clarity is often more valuable than comfort. At the same time, some readers may find parts of his philosophy intense. Radical transparency, for example, may work differently depending on culture, personality, and context. What is useful in one environment could feel too harsh in another if not handled carefully. Some people may also feel that his machine-like view of life can understate the emotional complexity of being human. This does not make the book weak. It simply means the reader has to apply judgment. Principles should serve reality, and reality includes human nuance. Not every environment can or should copy Dalio's systems exactly. But many of the underlying ideas remain valuable. Embrace truth, invite thoughtful disagreement, learn from mistakes, and build systems that improve decisions. The most mature way to read this book is not as a rigid manual, but as a serious framework. Take the principles that help you see more clearly. Adapt the methods to fit your own life and values. Use the spirit of the book, reality over ego, learning over defensiveness, systems over chaos, even if the exact style is not always a perfect match. That balance makes the book more useful. You do not need to become Ray Dalio. You need to become more thoughtful about how you make choices, how you respond to setbacks, and how honestly you are willing to face yourself. Seen this way, Principles becomes not just a philosophy of performance, but a challenge to live with more truth, discipline, and conscious design. At its heart, Principles is a book about learning how to deal with reality well. Ray Dalio's core argument is that life rewards people who can face truth honestly, reflect deeply on their mistakes, reduce the influence of ego, and build systems that lead to better decisions over time. The book teaches that success is not mainly about talent or confidence. It is about process. It is about how you respond when things go wrong. It is about whether you are willing to confront painful facts, learn from them, and improve the machine that produced them. It is about replacing vague reactions with principles that can guide action consistently. Several major lessons stand out. First, pain can become progress if you reflect on it instead of avoiding it. Second, your ego and blind spots are often bigger threats than outside obstacles. Third, truth matters more than appearances, which is why honest feedback and clear diagnosis are so important. Fourth, better decisions come when you listen carefully to believable people and rely on tested systems instead of unstable emotions. And finally, a meaningful life requires not just achievement, but meaningful work and meaningful relationships. What makes this book lasting is that it invites the reader to become an active designer of their life. Instead of drifting through repeated mistakes, you are asked to observe patterns, write down lessons, and turn experience into practical principles. That process creates wisdom that can actually be used. This is also why the book connects so strongly with ambitious readers. It does not flatter the audience. It challenges them. It says that growth requires truth, that progress requires discomfort, and that better results require better thinking. That message is demanding, but it is also deeply empowering. It means improvement is possible if you are willing to do the work honestly. So if you take only one big idea from Principles, let it be this. Do not let life happen to you without learning from it. Study reality. Learn from pain. Build better rules. Seek honest input. Improve your systems. Repeat that process again and again. Because in Dalio's view, the quality of your life will depend less on how confident you feel in the moment and much more on the principles you build, the truth you are willing to face, and the discipline you use to act on what is real.